Hi, welcome. Hey, thank you so much for clicking on this video and watching. I'm so excited to be with you and to be sharing everything that I'm doing, and hopefully this is something that you find useful for you. So I want to get right into it. My presentation is called Mailbox Money Backed by Bricks, the Power of Passive Note Investing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what notes are, how they work, and how working with me can be a benefit to you. So let's get going here. I got to tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm going to do this by telling you about my three great loves. So, number one, first and foremost, is my family. They are absolutely the first priority in my life, the thing that I love the most. We get to do all kinds of cool things together. We get to go on hikes and go outside and do all these fun things and just get outside and do things. And I love that. And that actually works right into my second great love, which is being outside. I love being outside. It's so much fun. And there's just so much goodness and greatness out there that I love just sharing that with my family and whenever we get a chance. And the last one there. And the that goes into my third love, which is business. I really like business. I've always been an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, not the scary kind, but the fun kind. And it's been a great opportunity for me to learn all these different things. Very briefly, I want to tell you a little bit about my history and some of the things that I have done over my career and how I've learned from each one of these things and what that has done to contribute to where I am today. So first and foremost, my first real business was a Curves franchise. So if you remember back in the early 2000s, this was a gym for women that we got involved with. My mom was a member, and she kind of convinced us to get into this. What a great business this was. Awesome learning curve. Learned a lot in a very short amount of time. Mostly, I think the biggest takeaway from this was we loved helping people. This was such a great opportunity to help these women come in and to be able to meet some fitness goals and feel better about themselves, lose weight, all those great things. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful just to be able to help these people and have them feeling so much better about themselves. The one thing that I did notice though, at as time went on and as we ended up having to sell we had two curves franchise and we had to sell them, it's not very recession resistant. We ended up having to sell because as the recession started to hit in 2008, what's one of the first things that people cut from their budget if they're worried about their finances? Gym membership. So that one, it didn't end as well as I would have liked, but like I say, it was a great adventure. It was a great learning experience. As we started into the curves, about a couple of years into it, started doing some real estate. So this was awesome. I would fly out across the country and flip houses on the other side of the country with my suitcase full of tools and my sleeping bag, sleep on the floor, and just work like crazy for a couple of weeks and just get done everything that I could. And this was awesome. This was my first real introduction into real estate. Helped me understand how that works. Started making some really great money with it. Great. One thing that I learned though, there are a couple of things. So again, as the recession hit, we got stuck with one property that I ended up having to rent out. And so I figured out a couple of things. Number one, swinging hammers is hard work. And number two, I don't really like being a landlord. That was a lot of work for the cash flow is great, but the amount of work that went into it, and then having to take care of the property on top of having to rent it out and screen people and all these different things, it required a lot of time and energy and money to take care of it. So as much as I liked it, that was kind of the downside of that. But again, great learning experience. I loved that. Just got me into real estate, and I caught the bug for sure. And that's how that started up. Fast forward a couple of years, this is when I started doing notes. I got into notes by, first of all, creating notes. I had this portfolio of properties where, or tasked with do something with it just as the recession hit. So my old partner and I thought we had invented seller financing, where we were selling properties on terms, meaning we had the property and then I would sell it, where the person that was going to be moving into the house, they would do a small down payment and then they were going to pay a monthly payment that would include principal and interest, again with the agreement that as the homeowner, kind of like a rent to own type of agreement, but as the homeowner, they were the ones that were going to be taking care of the property. So it took off my plate those things that I didn't like about being a landlord, but it had them step into that role instead. So that was great. And again, it was all about helping people. I came across all the time where people were living in the home, not able to make their payments, and we were able to help them restructure and refinance either with me or with the bank and be able to get back on their feet. And that was fantastic. What a great business. And it talk about catching the bug. That really took it to the next level for me. Real estate's great. Notes are even better, in my opinion. And so that's how I got started in that. And I love it. That was in 2009 is when I first got started buying non-performing notes in 2010. And it's just been a ride and it's so much fun. As much as I love non-performing notes, meaning the people were not making payments, so immediately there was some work to do. And not that I mind that at all. It was actually really educational and rewarding, and it was just a really great experience. The challenge with it that I had with the non-performers is the outcome is relatively unpredictable. I don't exactly know when it's going to turn around or what the profit margin is going to be because it can go so many different directions. We can have it where, say, we think that the house is occupied and we're going to have them start making payments again, only to find out that actually it's not occupied, it's empty. Well, now we've got to change strategies. We've got to switch to a foreclosure and do something completely different. So it's a completely different, approach to the same problem. But because of that, those kinds of things came up constantly. So it's really hard to predict how much we're going to make and when, and be able to have that be consistent. Leading to what we do today, and that's the Earnest Investing Fund. And I'm going to talk more about that as we go along here, but that's where now we buy performing notes, far more predictable, far more steady as far as knowing how much we're getting paid and when, and also still being able to help people when they do have any kind of challenges, any kind of difficulties. The other thing that I do now is something we took over a few years ago, and that's the Diversified Mortgage Expo. So this is an annual conference that I took over. In fact, we've got some slides on that. All about note investing. So people come from all over the country and beyond, and they come and learn more about note investing, or they just network with other note investors that they've known forever, and they're just looking to strengthen relationships. And it's just been just a tremendous conference and a time to get together and to come and learn together. It's been fantastic. In 2025, the big bonus is I was able to combine two of my loves by having this business going on, and then I got to have my family come along, and that was fantastic. My kids were able to help, and they were tremendous help actually in getting everything accomplished and making sure that things ran smoothly. So that was fantastic. So now I got those two things together. So now if I can just figure out how to do this conference outside with my family, we'll have it all set. So I'll work on that. I'll let you know. So let's back up a little bit just in case you're not aware of what a note is. So this is important to know. So note is just paper. It's just a stack of paper. Literally, it's a file folder with all the paper that's on it. And on this paper is all the terms. So that tells you what the payment amount is. What's the amount owing? When is that payment due and for how long? How many months? All those kind of different terms and conditions are contained in the paper. The paper, of course, is backed by the real estate, backed by the sticks and bricks. So if anything does go wrong, that's our backup plan. If we have some reason why we need to take back property, we can do that. And so that's always our safety in the background. But essentially, that's it. It's an IOU. The person living in the house, they've signed the paper saying, I promise to pay X amount of dollars with an X% interest rate over however many months. Essentially, that's it. That's the very basics of it. And then there's 10 more pages of terms and conditions and in case of and what ifs and all those kinds of things that's contained in there. The other thing you need to know about notes is that they are traded at a discount. So somebody will be the note holder, whether that's an individual or whether that's an institution. That can be a bank or some other kind of entity, and they're holding on to this paper and they want to sell it so that they can recapitalize. Same with an individual. They're holding on to this paper. They want to sell it so that they can recapitalize. Essentially, that's it. They would rather have a lump sum of cash today rather than collecting those payments over time. I'm the opposite. I would rather have those payments over time and then be willing to pay that lump sum of cash today. So essentially, that's what a note is. So why do I love notes so much? Here's why. Going back into my history and the things that I've done and things that I have experienced, I never have to swing a hammer. That is great. Swinging hammers is great, but it's a lot of work. It can be very taxing, and one of the things that I don't like about that is the surprises that come along with it. So many times we'd be fixing up a property and then we, open up a wall so that we can fix something there. Come to find out, actually, there's a bigger problem back there. So now we've got a bigger budget, now we've got more time, and it just takes up more stuff. And so it just comes with all kinds of surprises. And as much as I like doing that, I don't love the surprises so much. Certainly not anymore. And so that's one of the things I love about notes. I never have to swing a hammer. I love that I'm not working with tenants. I'm not dealing with toilets, trash, taxes, not even property managers. That none of that stuff is my issue. So with a regular landlording situation where you've got a rental property, every monthly payment that comes in, you're having to set aside a portion of that because eventually you're going to have to fix something on the house. That's the roof, that's the toilet, new carpet, new paint, whatever. You're going to have to do something with that. So not all of that monthly income actually comes to you. Only a portion of that does because you're always planning for the next eventual repair, planned or unplanned. Versus now I've got owners living in the home. I don't own the home. The person living in the house, they own the home. They've got the pride of ownership. They're the ones choosing the color that's going to be on the wall. They're the ones that are beautifying it because it's theirs and they want to make it their own. So I love that. I don't have to deal with the liability of owning the property, which I consider a liability because it requires work and requires time and attention and money. So I love that as well. I don't actually own the home. I own the paper behind the home so that I can control it in a different way without actually having to get my hands dirty with that. Part two, why do I love notes? I love that cash flow. That part that I liked about being a landlord was that monthly income, which was really great. But again, like I say, with that landlord situation, I was having to set aside money every month. With this, I don't. I don't own that home. I don't have to plan for eventual repairs. Now we're talking about principal and interest being paid, not rent. So it's a mortgage payment. It's not a rent payment. So I love that cash flow, and I get to keep more of it, which is also great. Like I mentioned, every note that we buy, it's always secured by real estate. In the background there is the residential property. I'm only buying first lien mortgages. So that's what's backing up my note that I've got just to make sure that there is actually some value there. It's not some nebulous something in the cloud. This is actual real hard bricks back in the property. I love that this is recession resistant. Now, nothing is completely recession proof in my opinion, but we're very independent of whatever's going on in the market. And that is really comforting. I love that stocks can be going up, down, sideways, doesn't matter. What I've purchased is an established set of terms. So whatever's going on in the market doesn't change the already signed contract between the lender and the borrower. That doesn't make any difference. So I love that whatever can be going on, everything's all going to pot and everyone's scared about this, that, and the other thing. But the terms of that mortgage don't change. Doesn't matter who owns it, doesn't matter where it's going. It's the same thing. So I love that about that. So it really gives me a lot of comfort. I want to tell you a little bit about due diligence on when I'm purchasing these notes and how do I look at these notes and make sure that this is a good buy versus a not so good buy. So very first thing that I look at, typically what happens is if I'm getting it from an institution or a larger company, I'll get a list. So it'll be a spreadsheet and it'll have anywhere from one to hundreds of different notes on there that they're looking to sell. So I go through that and or whether it's coming from an individual, either way, I'm looking at the note numbers. So I want to know like what's the original balance? What's the first date that it was paid? When's the last date that they made a payment? When's the next due date? What's the last due date? When it's going to expire? The remaining balance. What's the balance on the note today? And what's the interest rate? All of these different things make a difference when I am evaluating, and I want to make sure that all those numbers make sense. For example, a 3% interest rate is a very different thing than a 9% interest rate in my world. It's going to make a huge difference to what I'm willing to pay for that. So value of the property. Like I say, this is real estate related. So yes, I am concerned with the property because if I do need to eventually take back that property, I want to make sure that there's some value there. So that's something we'll look at. I will go through and look on Zillow and Redfin to get an idea of what I think the property is worth. Then, once I have put in a bid for how much I'm willing to pay for this note, I will actually send out a local realtor. They will go out, look at the property, give me their market knowledge and live pictures of this property to tell me what they think the house is worth. If we're pretty close in value, great. Then we're doing well and we can move on to the next step. If there's a big difference there, whether the realtor is higher or lower than me, we're going to have a conversation. And I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not trying to show that I'm right about whatever number that I came up with. I'm trying to understand why it's so different than what I see online because maybe there's a difference. For example, I had one where somebody went by the house and as what I could see online, I told one story. And then when the realtor went, well, the door was wide open and the windows were broken. Well, that doesn't show up online. The pictures that were coming up on Google were from a year ago, and so I didn't see the current condition. So it makes a world of difference. So I always want to make sure that I understand what's happening today, what's today's value, broken windows, open door, whatever. Not an after repair value, but today's condition, today's numbers. That's always very important. Another thing that I'll always do is run a title report. And this is really important because I need to know as the first lien holder, I am a very high priority, but I'm not technically the first priority. First priority would be property taxes or municipal liens or mechanic liens, things like that. Those things can actually come ahead of the first lien mortgage. So I want to make sure I understand what's out there. Are there any other liens that are attached to the property that obviously we can't see by looking at the house? So I had ones where I got the report back, and under the description, as the lien holder, it just said United States of America. And I went, that doesn't sound great. So I went back to the title company and said, okay, so can you tell me a little bit about more like what this is and like who is this and what are we talking about? And it was like a $60,000 lien, like not a small amount. They came back and said, well, actually, it's the Department of Justice. As soon as he said that, I thought, you know what? I'm out. I don't need to even understand more about the story. But for me, that's enough. I'm not going to try to negotiate with that or try to, prove one way or another whether I should be in first position over that or something like that. I'm out. And I'll move on to the next deal. But I wouldn't have seen that had I not run that report. So every single time we always run that report because we need to know. One of the last things I look at for due diligence is pay history. So anytime I'm looking at a note, there is all of the note numbers, everything that comes in on the spreadsheet, value title, all those great things. And then there's also the servicer. So the servicer is the one who's actually receiving the payments, and then they pass on the payment over to the note holder. Part of their responsibility is to document any kind of communication that they've had with the borrower. So I get to read through those notes and just see like what kind of conversations have they been having? Have they been trying to call this borrower and not getting through? Or is the due date the first, but they consistently pay on the 18th of the month or, something like that. Just, and none of these things are necessarily deal breakers. I just need to know what the story is, what's going on and what's the background so that we know what we're getting into. This is potentially a 20 or 30-year relationship with this homeowner. So I want to make sure I understand what habits have already been established so that we can understand how to navigate that going forward. So that's an important one as well. So reading through that pay history and just seeing what's there, what's important, what's not, all those kinds of things. So that's due diligence. So super simple. I could say, here you go, you can go and off and do this on your own. So why would you then work with somebody like me? Well, there's benefits to that. There's benefits to working with somebody who has been doing this a long time. And here's a few. So these are just the questions that I get, and this is the benefit that I can bring. So the number one question I always get is, where do you find these notes? Well, that's tricky, and because there isn't a central database for this. There are a couple of online resources where you can go and find notes that people have chosen to list on that site, but by no means are those all of the notes out there. So how do you find them? Well, it's a ton of networking. The conference has been a huge part of that for me, in just having people come and find me to bring their notes to me and say, "Hey, I've got this note. Or I'm looking to sell it. Is this something you'd be interested in?" So that's a big one. Evaluation. I've done this hundreds and hundreds of times over the past 15, 16 years now. So that's a big deal. You want somebody that has been able to look through enough of these to be able to very quickly and accurately evaluate a note without second guessing and thinking, well, maybe this, maybe that. No, no, no. We've established that already. We've done this over hundreds and hundreds of times. Default management. What happens when somebody stops making a payment? Well, that's a big deal. And it does happen. For years and years, all I dealt with were defaulted notes. So because I've done that hundreds of times, I'm actually very well versed in dealing with defaults. If somebody doesn't make a payment, great. I know exactly how to deal with that. And we'll approach the homeowner and say, okay, so what's the story? See what we can get going forward. Almost always, I'll just say this as kind of an aside almost always we're able to work something out. It's very rare, maybe 5% of the time, where we're actually foreclosing on a person. And it's a rare occurrence. Most of the time, almost always, if I'm going to a foreclosure, it's because the house is empty. Either the homeowner has abandoned it or they've passed away. And so there's nobody there to make a payment. So again, I've done that hundreds and hundreds of times. So I know what I'm doing, and it makes it a lot safer. So state laws, there's all kinds of state laws. Everyone's a little bit different. Texas is different than New York. New York is different than Florida. Florida is different than North Carolina. Every state has their own little things that they have to do, and nuances between all the different places, even sometimes county level. There's can be all these differences. But again, because I've done this hundreds of times, I've dealt in a lot of different states, over 20 states. We tend to be on the eastern half of the country. I think I've probably had a note in almost every single one of them, plus some western states as well, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, different places like that. So again, it's to your benefit to work with somebody who's done this a whole bunch of different times. Uh, and the team. So here's maybe my analogy for all of this put together is you want somebody that knows what they're doing. And here's how I know that. So when I first bought my own house, years and years ago, I had to go out and wash the outside windows. And so I went out, I think I looked up online, some kind of like a home cleaning solution, whatever. And you use this much vinegar and that much dish soap and some water and whatever. I put all that together, went out and washed the windows, had to get up on the ladder and probably reaching too far out to where I shouldn't have been trying to reach. And at the end of the day, what happened was I looked up at the windows and they were cleaner, but they were still a little bit streaky, and there's some, leftover residue here and there and everything. And it was, like I say, better, definitely. But I had kind of put myself into a precarious situation, and dealing with things that I didn't really have all the professional things. I had a rag and a bucket, and that was about it. So fast forward a few years, and then just a couple of years ago, I had somebody knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm here. I can wash your windows all over your house." So we're in a bigger house now. It's up to the second story, and I can't reach up there. I don't have a ladder that even gets up there. So I thought, you know what? I think probably it's time. Maybe I should bring in the professional. So here we go. I say, yeah, go ahead. And I went out just to kind of see what he was doing and see like how is he doing this so much better than I am. Because he was. I go out there and he's got this whole filtration system that takes out all the minerals out of the water. So there's no chance for any residue or any spots left on the windows. And he's got these poles that will reach up far past the second story. And he's got all these different things that make it far more effective, far more efficient, and a whole lot safer for me with better results. And so all of that together, I thought, okay, this is why we hire professionals. That's why we have people do this for me. So for what it's worth, I've been doing this for years and years, and I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds of notes. Maybe it's worth going with a professional, somebody that knows what they're doing. So what are we offering? I'm talking about a passive income fund. This is a way for you to access the note investing world without having to learn the business or even to manage the risk. We do that. All you do is collect cash flow, track your performance like any other passive investment. That's what we're offering. So professional management, professional underwriting, and all the team. So the team, I skipped over that a little bit, but we're talking about professional underwriting. We've got realtors that we can tap into at any city, attorneys, servicing, all of these different things that need to get set up for anybody who's getting into notes. I have all that. That's all been established, well established, and everybody's in their spot. And they know what they're doing. This is a very niche market. I say this all the time, but it bears repeating. This is real estate related, but it's not real estate. And I think that's really important because that took me some time to get my head around. We're not actually after the real estate. If I can help it, I never actually want to own the real estate. And again, that takes some getting used to try to think like the bank. But it's anyway, it's access to this kind of market that you probably wouldn't have access to otherwise. This is a passive, secured, and unique kind of a business. To date, I have been on over 100 different podcasts. Besides going to different, real estate meetings or networking meetings, things like that. And I can tell you that anytime that I talk to somebody about notes and how they work and what I'm doing, 100% of the time, people love the concept. And it's really interesting, even among experienced real estate investors, probably 90% of them have never heard of notes. They know all about real estate, but they've never actually heard of note investing before. And that's again, that's what I love about this is I can go in with this specialized knowledge, a niche within a niche market. Real estate is already a niche, and then within that is note investing, and that's what we're providing access to. And then we're helping homeowners. One quick story on that, just talk about impact investing. So I had a note on a property in North Carolina, and the gentleman there had good credit score. We had been having a conversation, and that came up in the conversation. And I said, "Oh, okay. If you've got good credit, it probably is to your benefit to go back to the bank and refinance." And I printed up an amortization chart that showed where how much he was paying with me at 9%, I think it was, and then how much he was going to get with the bank at, I think it was 4 or 5%, something like that. And I just showed him the difference in the numbers and how much money he was going to be able to save if he went back and refinanced with the bank. Why would I do that? Well, the earlier I can get paid out, the better. And like I said before, notes are always traded at a discount. So if I can get paid out in full rather than having to have a discount whenever I'm ready to sell this note, great. Then my margins go up and he benefits because now he's got a lower rate and he can save a bunch of money. And the bank benefits because now they've got a new customer. The long and short of it is he needed a new furnace to go along with it to get the refinance done. I was able to provide the capital for him to go out and buy that furnace and have that installed. And then we wrap that into the total amount of his loan, and he was able to get the financing. Win, win, win all over. It was just a great example of how this business works so well to be able to help people in whatever situation they're in. So it's a fantastic, fantastic business for that. And I got stories for days on that, but there's one. So one of the other things I love about this fund idea is there are no surprises. So ice cream, what does that have to do with anything? At my conference, one of the things we do is we do an ice cream social. We have Ben and Jerry's come out and they serve out ice cream. So when I go to them and I order half baked, I know that I'm going to get chocolate and vanilla ice cream with brownie pieces and chunks of chocolate chip cookie dough. That's half baked. I'm not going to get Cherry Garcia. I'm not going to get Chunky Monkey because that's not what I ordered. I ordered half baked. So I know that if because that's what I ordered, that's what I'm going to get. In a fund, that's exactly what we're offering. You're going to get exactly what you ordered because there are just no surprises inherently. So this is an immediate diversification of your capital. Because you're getting into this pool of notes, you're not attached to any one particular note. You're attached to the pool of the notes. So you own a piece of that one, a piece of that one, and a piece of this one. And that just helps spread out the risk. That helps spread out any kind of risk that might be attached with that. So I love that about that. We are independent of the stock market, independent of whatever else is going on in the market. Now we're supersized because now we're part of a fund. So it's not just one note. Now we're part of, 20, 50, 100, however many notes are in the pool at that time. So again, that just helps spread it out. And unlike Wall Street, like you talk about the stock market and talk about the roller coasters and all the things that are going on, we take all that away. So unlike Wall Street, unlike the stock market, every dollar that we have in the fund is invested and is secured by a hard asset. So even in case of default, we're not losing value. We're just recovering the asset and then we resell. And that helps us recapitalize everything. It's very rare that there's any kind of a loss on that. Not to say it doesn't happen, but it's very rare. There's no capital calls. So if you've ever been part of a maybe multifamily syndication project or something like that, and the cost of lumber has gone up, well, now all of a sudden they're coming back to you as the investor saying, oh, hey, by the way, we've got these extra costs. We need some more capital. That's just not the case with notes. Again, what we bought is a pre-existing set of terms. So there's no need to have to go back and recapitalize and get more funds back into it. That just doesn't happen. So it's automatically independent of that as well. So again, no surprises in there. I love that bit about note investing, especially about the fund. And you're looking for the bullseyes, cash flow. So again, this is from a conference. The night before the conference starts, we do an axe throwing tournament. And because this is what we're after, is that bullseye. It's cash flow is king. So this is something that was mentioned at one of the conferences is that the speaker said, cash, actually, it's a misnomer when we say cash is king. That's actually not true. Really, cash flow is king. And that just rang so true with me because again, that's what note investing is all about. It's all about that cash flow. You can have all kinds of cash, but if it's tied up and you can't access it, it doesn't do a whole lot of good. But when you've got that cash flow coming in, that's a totally different story. And that's fantastic. So we're talking about much more predictable, much more stable kind of an income, um, so that how much you're getting paid and when. It's I love that. I love that. It's a slow burn kind of thing. This is not a get rich quick. This is not the kind of thing where you're going to make a flip and make a whole bunch of money. This is going to be mailbox money over time. Fantastic for an IRA investment. That's really what it's designed for. I want to give you one example just so you can get some numbers behind this and get a visual of what that looks like. So this is a note that was in the fund. We've since sold it, but just it was a good example, so I wanted to show it. So this is a note where property is located in Florence, South Carolina. Property value on this is $90,000. The loan balance is $80,000. My purchase price on this was $65,000. So one thing I want to point out right here is anytime I'm buying any note, I'm always building in a minimum 25% equity spread. Again, just as a further protection, if there's some kind of a correction in the market, we end up taking back this property and then the property value drops, I want to make sure that we're well protected. So there's always a minimum 25% equity spread already built in there. So that being said, the note balance was 80,000, bought it for 65. The monthly payment is just under $750 a month. Now, in this kind of a situation, now I become the bank. So the person no longer is paying whoever they were paying before. Now they're paying us. And this leaves all kinds of room in there. For an example, we pay an 8%, and I'll get to that in a second. We pay 8%. In this specific example, the share for the investor in this is $433. So that leaves plenty of room for expenses, including myself getting paid. But to be clear, the investor gets paid first. I don't get paid until the investor gets paid. That's how it works. So with the investor is always getting paid first, it's a preferred return. All right. So again, brass tacks, what are we offering? 8% annual return. So this is not a predicted, this is not an up to, this is not a, we might be able to, this is what we pay. Because of the way that we purchase, I can confidently say that. My my attorney says that I can't use the word guarantee, and I learned that a long time ago when we had our curves, and these ladies would come in and want to guarantee that they're going to lose weight. I can't do that. I can't tell you that that's what's going to happen. But what I can tell you is because of the way that we're set up, the way that we purchase, it would be very difficult for us not to pay that 8%. It's just what we do. We're talking about monthly income. We can set it up. Currently, we're set up as quarterly. We can set this up as monthly if that's what you prefer. And you can either choose to take that distribution or you can leave it in. For example, if this is an IRA situation where you're using IRA funds, you may want to leave that in there and just have it compound over time. So, and as you've probably seen, as you compound it, that 8% will turn into 9, that 9 will turn into 10 over time as it continues to compound. The other thing that we're offering is liquidity. There's no minimum hold time for this investment. So if you decide to put some money in today and 6, 9, 12 months from now, you decide you want to take it out, that's fine. We don't have any kind of minimum hold time. There's no penalty for taking out your money. It's available to you whenever you want it. The only thing I would ask is for about a 60-day lead time. Because all the cash is tied up in notes, I do need some time to be able to cash out the note to be able to sell that to somebody else so I can get that capital back out to you. Just because you're probably not aware, notes trade very quickly. In a traditional sense, if you've got a property, you decide you want to put it up for sale, you have to go and do whatever repairs, some kind of improvements to the property. Then you get your realtor in there and he gives you your punch list, and then you've got another couple of things. Then you get it up and put it on the market. It sits there from anywhere from, a couple of days to maybe a month or two. And then it takes another 30 to 45 days to close. So minimum, you're talking about a 3-month turnaround. Easily that can turn into 6 or even 9 months. With notes, it's really not the case. With notes, if I'm looking at a note that I want to purchase, I put an offer in today. I have usually about a week to do final due diligence, and then we fund. So it's typically a 7 to 10 day turnaround when we're talking about a note. But I'm asking for 60 days just to be sure. I want to make sure that I can live up to what I'm promising there. So this fund really is everything that traditional, real or any kind of long-term investment teaches. It's talking about residual income, minimal effort. You're not chasing appreciation. You're collecting predictable checks backed by real estate. This is what I'm offering. This is what I would hope that you would come and join me. Love it for you to come and join the Earnest Investing family. One more thing here. So that's my email and my phone number. That phone number is my cell phone. So you're talking to me. Anytime you have a question, anytime you've got any kind of concerns or anything, you pick up the phone. You can text me on that number. I'm the one picking it up. So it's not, a far away. It's not even a team member. It's not some call center. It's not something like that. You're getting me on the phone. So anytime you've got any questions, I'm the one answering. That QR code will link to my Calendly link if you want to just go ahead and make an appointment to talk to me. But I would love to talk to you and see if we're a good fit. And thank you again so much for joining me today. And hopefully this has been useful and educational for you. I hope to talk to you soon. Please give me a call. Thank you.